So the difference between this cycle and all the previous ones is the geopolitical and macroeconomic situation of every other major power. And that is, we are in the midst of changing the world order. I don't know what that new world order will be, but the people who make money off of the old order don't want it to change, and therefore they're going to print more money than we've ever seen in human history to try to forestall that change. The change will still happen. They will still get swept aside by the tides of history. But in its wake, we have Bitcoin, and that allows us to escape.
Hmm?
What are you doing?
Nothing. Me? Just hanging around.
What's going on, guys? K-Dub here with another episode of Crypto Zombie. Welcome back to the channel. Hope you're having a great day today. Now, do not be deterred by the length of this video. Look, sometimes there is literally nothing to talk about, so I'm not just going to make videos to make them. Well, today is not that case at all. In fact, today I have so much to cover that I even thought about breaking today's video into 2 videos possibly. But you know what, guys? We're just gonna push through it today because a lot of people right now are concerned about what's going on in the economy with crypto. Why is the price not moving up after the halving? If we have a look over here, you could see we're really just still consolidating in this pattern. Now, I've heard some people refer to this as a potential bull flag pattern. To me, it looks a little bit more like a falling wedge, which is still technically a bullish pattern. You could see that we did have a retest right here at the top of the ascending parallel channel, and we currently find ourselves sitting at the very bottom of this extremely important consolidation range, right? In fact, if I come over here, one of the big things I had spoke about was this massive green buying candle right here that bounced perfectly off of the 21 exponential. And, you know, arguably some of the last times that we've seen, you know, these types of movements, you could say we kind of had a candle right here, right? Very similar to the candle that we're having right now. Now, I'm not going to focus too much on the price action. In fact, I'm going to put the TA at the end of this video, but I just want to point out, do not be fooled by this current price action. In fact, what we may be experiencing is just the simple fact that you have a lot of the estimated average purchases of the ETFs around $62,200. So technically, you know, if we're falling below those levels, you may have some of those panic sellers that are selling out, you know, because, hey, you know, I'm down on my investment, screw this new asset class that I just got involved in. But I wanted to put one chart on before I get into all the other content. And then, like I said, TA at the end of the video today. But Mags pointed out, and I did retweet this over on Twitter, you could see that, you know, we had these multiple fake outs where when we had all of these moments, everyone kind of thought that that was the end of the consolidation and we were going to move to the downside. But if you kind of look at the fake out that we're having right here, you could see how we came and we retouched this sort of, you know, the accumulation bottom, I guess you could call it. Well, if you look down here, what did we do? We had a very similar move to the top of this box around the $32,000 area, where then we fell all the way back down on that 20% move to around 24,000. We pumped up again, faked everyone out. They thought it was a little kind of mini, you know, double top. And then we had the fake out again before continuing the move. And I would say that this right here kind of looks a lot like this right here. So it's kind of suggesting that there could be some more boring sideways, even potential fake outs moving forward, right? So just, you know, kind of take a look at this chart, see where we're at, and understand that these markets do take time. But one thing that I do want to mention is the fact that we obviously have a presidential election coming up right now. Now, you may have seen some news come out about Biden saying he would veto certain things, and, you know, there's that camp. And then at the same time, we have Trump, who, by the way, was very anti-crypto about 3 years ago, now seems like he might be changing his tune. So I want to show you some very compelling data with a lot of video clips. I have a lot of clips for you today, all different things I want to go over. And the other thing that I kind of wanted to mention was, did somebody just mathematically crack the code on the Bitcoin all-time high for this cycle? Pretty incredible. It could just be a coincidence, but it also might not be. So again, my friends, I highly suggest bookmark this video, save it, whatever you got to do, turn on the bell notifications. If you can't get through the video in one sitting, I definitely suggest you come back and revisit it because we have a lot to go over. But I did want to just say one thing, guys, before we move on. So MetaSignals has finally, thanks to everybody's requests, is now offering a USD tier. That's right. So you can now, if you guys are interested and you don't want to buy the NFT, which by the way will give you lifetime access, I personally recommend the NFT, but if you don't want to do that, you just want to kind of dip your toes in the water, they do have now, you can do a month for $549 or a year for $5,490, and you will get a full refund within the first 7 days if you are not satisfied, although I think you probably will if you just, sign up and join the free Discord. But if you guys want to get a discount on this, if you use the link below and enter the code ZOMBIE at checkout, ZOMBI, you're going to get 20% off, okay? And again, if you're not happy within the first 7 days, then, obviously maybe it's not for you guys. So really excited about the fact that they've launched the USD tier. I think this is going to open up a lot of opportunity, if you want to test it out for a month, but I think you're probably going to be pretty satisfied with it. So, check that out, guys, below. Obviously, still, we have the LevX promotions. We do have a trading competition coming up, which I think you guys might be interested in. You could win up to $15,000, so you might want to check that out, as well as the Blowfin exchange bonus of $3,500. So, now that we got all that out of the way, let's start right here with whoever made this. They took the Coinbase ad and they flipped it into a Bitcoin ad. I just wanted to start off with something fun and then strap in because we got a lot to talk about.
What is this archaic system?
Mother's maiden name? Leibowitz?
You're telling me this guy is how things get verified.
That's my job.
I'm just saying, you shouldn't have to buy $10 worth of gum if you just want 79 cents worth of gum. Why do you get charged your money to take your money from your account? And if you're out of money, they charge you for being out of money?
What?
An overseas transfer takes 5 days?
Business days.
Why?
What are they using? A Zeppelin?
I deposit the check Monday.
But Monday was a bank holiday.
Why is this the way it is?
A bank holiday?
This system
What's a bank holiday?
makes no sense.
This makes no sense.
Who designed this system?
Ma'am?
Is this really the best we can do?
Hello?
Don't we deserve better?
All right, so here we go, guys. So again, I wanted to turn it over to our buddy Arthur Hayes. Now, he's been calling for a potential $1 million Bitcoin this cycle. Sounds like Moonboy math, but as I said in the beginning of the video, and as I said in my previous video, do not be fooled by this current price action. There is a lot that is happening that most people seem to just be ignoring while they're only focusing on the fact that Bitcoin is down 20% or whatever. But here's why you really shouldn't be worried.
Everybody is wondering, when are we going to see the effects of the Bitcoin halving kicking in and having like an impact on the trajectory of Bitcoin price?
So, you can look at the previous halvings, and anywhere between 4 to 18 months later, you get a new all-time high. The more important thing is that the major economies around the world are going to print even more money between now and, say, the next 18 to 24 months. I think the big event that crypto investors need to follow very closely is the upcoming U.S. presidential election. Not because the U.S. is important just because it's the U.S., but more so it's the global empire, its financial policy influences what the Chinese, the Japanese, the Europeans all do. And so if you have an easing of monetary policy because Janet Yellen, U.S. Treasury Secretary, and Jerome Powell, the Fed president, are doing everything they can to make sure that Joe Biden gets reelected. And that basically means, how do I reduce the cost of government borrowing so that him and his Democratic Party can hand out more goodies to the electorate and get reelected? That's what's going to happen between now and the end of the year. When you control the purse of the government, it's very easy to do so by printing money, borrowing it, and handing it out to people in various forms.
So essentially, you think the American elections are going to be a net positive for the crypto market?
Regardless of who wins. Whoever wins, they're campaigning on, I'm going to give you something that you don't have to pay for. And I'm going to pay for it by borrowing more money. I'm going to pay for it by using the central bank to print money. And that's really what the fight is about. The bull market is still going to continue. Obviously, we've slowed down a bit, and now we're entering the summer, the northern hemispheric summer, where things slow down, volatility declines, and we're going to get a choppy range-bound market. But for those people who have fiat and extra cash that want to allocate to crypto, this is the perfect opportunity to do so.
And it's crazy to think that this may actually be the first time in history where cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin, talks about blockchain actually may matter in a US election. And Donald Trump, as you can see in this video, who recently said that he compared Bitcoin to thin air, he saw it as a threat to the dollar. He actually blatantly outright called it a scam, okay, on, I forget, I think it was CNBC or something like that. And now he's flipped his tune to this.
They are against it. The Biden doesn't even know what it is. If you ask Biden, sir, are you for or against crypto? What's that? What the? Get me off the stage. He's saying, get me off the stage. No, he has no idea. But look, Gensler is very much against it. The Democrats are very much against it. And I say this, a lot of people are very much for it. Probably a lot of the people in this group. And I'm fine with it. I want to make sure it's good and solid and everything else, but I'm good with it. And if you like crypto in any form, and it comes in a lot of different forms, if you're in favor of crypto, you better vote for Trump.
And one of the biggest concerns, obviously, that we've been having is seeing all of this sort of shift, right? The movement of all of these companies saying, we don't want to be in the US, we don't want to have our blockchain crypto business in the United States because it's obviously just a hostile and confusing environment. And he also chimed in about that as well.
Thank you for the statement. Yeah, with the goggles on.
A lot of the smartest people in crypto are moving their businesses out of the U.S. because they're scared of the U.S.'s regulations.
Because of the hostility.
Correct.
Yeah, crypto is moving out of the U.S. because of hostility toward crypto.
Correct. So what are you going to do to stop it?
Well, we'll stop it because I don't want that. I don't want that. I want that. If we're going to embrace it, we have to let them be here.
Yes, sir.
So this brings us back to our good old friend Arthur Hayes, the $1 million Bitcoin. Why is it possible this time? How could we actually fight the diminishing return theory? And why is it actually fundamentally different this time around?
So end of the year, I think we're going to be between $70,000 to $100,000 on the price of Bitcoin end of 2024. My, long-term sort of this cycle all-time high, anywhere between, I think it's going to be somewhere close to $1 million US for one Bitcoin on the upside. That's my prediction. I hope we get there. If we get even close, that'll be good.
Wow, but that's quite impressive. Most of the predictions for the top of this cycle are much more moderate.
So the difference between this cycle and all the previous ones is the geopolitical and macroeconomic situation of every other major power. And that is, we are in the midst of changing the world order. I don't know what that new world order will be, but the people who make money off of the old order don't want it to change, and therefore they're going to print more money than we've ever seen in human history to try to forestall that change. The change will still happen. They will still get swept aside by the tides of history. But in its wake, we have Bitcoin, and that allows us to escape.
And by the way, even though the ETFs seem like they're a little bit stagnant, right? There are so many reasons we've gone over why that could be the case. We did see GBTC inflows for the first time ever. Now, take it with a grain of salt. Who was buying it? Could it have been Digital Currency Group just buying their own product? Look, guys, we don't know at the end of the day. But what we can say is that there are massive ETF purchases. $438 billion asset manager Susquehanna has bought $1.3 billion in Bitcoin ETFs. We also have breaking news from the European regulator that is considering allowing Bitcoin exposure to be added to $12 trillion market for the UCITS. Now, I'm not really familiar with this as I'm from the US, but apparently they're saying that this is 2 times bigger than the US ETFs. And don't forget, we still have a lot of the players in the US that have not even allocated to the Bitcoin ETF yet, right? This is dinosaurs we're dealing with. This is going to take time. Everyone thought the ETFs would go live and, it would be this massive explosion, which in all fairness, it was. In fact, it was the best performing ETF that we've ever seen. But again, if this is a possibility, you're just starting to see the beginning of these crazy inflows potentially, and that's where I'm not going to go out and say that we're going to have a $1 million Bitcoin by the end of this cycle. That's a little crazy. I believe we will have a $1 million Bitcoin at some point, but as these situations escalate, for example, you have also MasterCard, JP Morgan, Visa, Wells Fargo, and other top US banks are testing shared ledger technology for tokenized asset settlements. Now, we'll get back to the asset settlements, real world assets, all that in just a bit. But, like Satoshi Flipper says, first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, then they win, right? So, it's just a matter of patience. Just because we understand it and we're, deep in it, well, the whole world is not quite there yet. But as Anthony Pompliano was pointing out, and this kind of ties into the whole narrative of the elections and the new generations that are coming in, essentially you have a new generation that's going to basically demand that these technologies be supported, right? We're not going to sit back and have our rights, taken away to self-custody and all these other things. And I do believe that it is going to continue to be a very large topic.
It's unclear kind of what Biden's personal views are, but it seems like the administration is not as friendly to it. And so I do think that you're starting to see candidates, though, that show up, Vivek, RFK, et cetera, who are very pro-Bitcoin, pro-freedom technologies, et cetera. And regardless of maybe the 70-plus crowd that is running for president today, it's a generational thing. And so what you're going to get is you're going to get people under the age of 40 or 50, they're growing up with this, right? And so it's kind of like when our generation, there's people running for president, if they don't support the technologies that we grew up on, we're going to be like, you're an idiot, right? And so it's okay for the kind of the older generation because there's that generational gap. But I think just over the long run, old people die, young people replace them, young people grow up with these technologies. It's going to be kind of the standard.
Another interesting point that he actually mentions has nothing really to do with Bitcoin specifically, but it actually talks about why the US may actually be, I suppose you could say, forced to embrace crypto. And it actually, believe it or not, has to do with the stablecoin issuers.
What we are playing is a global game of competition as well, right? And so, an interesting data point is that the stablecoin issuers are now, I believe, one of the top 17 buyers of U.S. Treasuries. And so when you look at that, you say, okay, well, it used to be that China and Japan bought 22% of all U.S. Treasuries. Well, we got a pretty big federal debt, right? We're issuing a lot of debt, and so obviously we need people to buy that stuff. China and Japan went from 22%, now they're only 7%. So if they're going to stop buying, or at least buy less of these bonds, who is going to be the new buyer? Well, stablecoins have actually showed up. And so my prediction is that the stablecoin issuers collectively will end up being kind of top 10 US Treasury buyers in the world. If that happens, all of a sudden that is systemically important. Right? We need these people to buy this debt. And so I think there's a lot of nuance and intricacies here that we've got to kind of figure out. And you can't just bring a hammer down on an industry, specifically if they're one of the biggest buyers of US Treasuries, and it's a time where we're spending, crazy people. And so it's how do you enforce rules, but also not kind of screw up the positive aspects. And I just hope that they get it right.
That's really something very interesting to consider that even I had not thought about, right? If we're not having as much interest in these standard instruments, but you have these stablecoin issuers looking to actually purchase these, well, then the US may have no choice but to embrace that, right? And getting back onto the point of crypto becoming this new asset class, becoming something that everyone at some point is going to be exposed to or allocated to, like Willy Woo pointed out, 15% of the 258 million adults in the US hold crypto. Based on US crypto adoption growth rates, I suspect this election year will be the last time a government can feasibly win while still being anti-crypto. Now, honestly, I'm not so sure where they're getting these numbers from, if this is coming from Coinbase or something like that. 15% to me seems a little bit high. Again, are they tracking wallets? Because again, you can have one entity that has, hundreds of wallets potentially. So I don't really know where the data is coming from specifically, but I would say that it's not as big as you would think. For example, you had Choose Rich Nick over here, which, let's be honest, I mean, take it with a grain of salt. The guy, he's got this funny personality. He puts on about being like Mr. Rich and all this other stuff. But, he was doing an interview in Miami, and the people in this video look relatively young, and you could see that there still is sort of a disconnect of, essentially what crypto and Bitcoin is.
As the most famous, successful, and attractive crypto CEO, I wanted to know what the masses feel about my industry. So I came down here to South Beach, Miami to ask the locals what they think about crypto. Let's go have a conversation. Do you know what the price of Bitcoin is right now?
A lot. 79 cents? $30,000?
$63,000.
3 pennies.
How much Bitcoin do you own?
Negatives. 1.3 million. I have no Bitcoin. With my alcohol addiction, none.
I mean, not to mention there was that student that gave that speech about Bitcoin. Now, apparently he was on he was on something. I don't really know. And the crowd kind of like booed it a little bit, and you might think that's kind of going against the theory. It's going against the idea of the younger generations embracing it. No, I disagree. I think there are still people in the younger generation that have no idea, or they don't understand it, or maybe they're a little bit sour that they think they've missed the boat, which I don't think anyone has missed the boat. I've talked about that. I mean, if you do think Arthur Hayes' prediction is going to come true, then I don't think it matters if you buy Bitcoin at 65, 60, 55, 48. Does it really matter? Or even if you buy at 70, does it really matter, right? So, but at the end of the day, yes, okay, there are still a lot of people that, let's say, maybe don't see the value in it, but I think it's slowly growing. And I would say that the majority of the value is potentially with the younger generation, which is also another reason why I still say there's a lot more to go in this bull market, because, if this guy's getting booed by a crowd of his peers, well, then obviously we're still early, because there's clearly still those doubters. And as those doubters still remain, probably signals were not quite at the top, right? I know it sounds backwards, but trust me, that's usually, when everyone is screaming from the rooftops, we're all going to be rich, that's usually when you should start worrying. But an interesting data to point out that Ki Young Ju had mentioned is if you look at the discrepancy between the market hash rate ratio to the Bitcoin price, which actually incredible, is we have this major gap between this. So if you're just going to base it on about where we've been historically, this would essentially say that he says network fundamentals could support a market cap 3 times the current size compared to the last cyclical top, potentially sustaining a price of $265K. So you could see there is that difference essentially between where we've been and where we are. And there is a lot more room to grow. Obviously, I'll show you more charts at the end of this video. But as I've been saying, for the past week, while everyone has been, or past couple weeks actually, while everyone has been freaking out about another 20% dip, which is really nothing in the grand scheme. I mean, 30%, 40%, that was like the norm 4 years ago, 3 years ago. Now we're seeing 20% dips and everyone's calling for the end of the market, but yet you're having whales, massive accumulation, massive. I mean, this isn't just, a little bit of accumulation. This is massive accumulation. So something's going on. Something is going on in the background, and the data is clearly pointing towards the fact that they are taking advantage of these lower price targets. Now, this is the very interesting mathematical equation that Crypto Vikings pointed out. Now, I'm not going to draw this on the chart. Just take these numbers. You could chart yourself if you have TradingView. There is stuff below also if you guys want. There's I think they have some kind of like discount on the packages if you want. I don't know. You can check that out below. Or they have a free one. You just got to deal with the ads. But he says, someone just pointed me this crazy thing. Local tops and bottoms from last few months are about 50% of their previous ones. For example, August 2023 local bottom was 25K, 50% up. It went to 37, around 37 to 38, right? That's one example. 38.5K was local bottom of January 2024. 50% up from that is about 57K. So is 56 to 57K local bottom May 2024 done? He says, I don't know. But similarly, August local top, 32K, 50% up is 48K. 49K was local top of January 2024, 50% up. You got it. Yes, 73 to 74. That's exactly what we hit. Now, this could be a coincidence, right? This just could be a coincidence that you do this from the local tops and bottoms. But now, if we look at 75K being the local top of March 2024, 50% up from that would be $111,000 for Bitcoin. And he says, you want to see another crazy thing? Paulo, the CEO of USDT, tweeted 111 number yesterday. Not sure if that's a coincidence or not, but at the same time, this falls in play perfectly with our bear case to our bull case targets, right? I don't have it pulled up right now, but our Fibonacci extension shows us that the next area after clearing the previous top of the 74K level, which is why I do believe we had that pullback, is around 102,000, right? The next area is around 150. So this is like a sweet spot right in the middle. I'm curious. I'm curious to see if 111,000 actually turns out to be the top of the market. That would actually be pretty incredible. But, like Lawrence Lepard was pointing out, if price goes up, there are other people that say, well, I mean, if it starts getting too expensive, right? Well, then who's going to buy? And you're probably going to have these massive sellers coming in. That's not actually true. That's the way that we think we buy the dips, right? Maybe if you're a trader, traders in the traditional space, maybe that's what they would do. But out in the real world, when you're having these people that are just allocating through brokerages or ETFs, or they're just looking to sit on something, what they're looking for is performance. And don't forget, we have something called a Veblen good, right? And a Veblen good is something that is more desirable as the price increases, right? You can make up anything for this. Expensive designer bags or watches or sports cars that go up in value or something like that, right? But he breaks it down in another way.
One other thing I will say about Bitcoin that I think people don't understand, and this is part of the innovation that's really important. Think about Bitcoin's a commodity, right? The SEC said it's a commodity. It is a commodity. One coin's the same as the next. Okay, fine. Every commodity in the world, if you increase its price, the supply goes up. If gold went to 10,000 tomorrow, we'd mine more gold. If corn went up, if oil went to $300 a barrel, we'd drill for more oil. You would get more, higher price, you would get more. No matter where the price of Bitcoin goes, the issuance schedule is set. There's not going to be any more. That's unique. And as a result of that, the world has never seen anything that really kind of looks like this, which is why, Ronnie Stofferly had a great chart on it. Bitcoin from inception has grown at 145% compound annually. And it's got a lower Sharpe ratio than any other asset. This is an amazing beast. It really is. And so look, but it's volatile, and to some it's scary, and I get all of that. But I've long contended that anybody who has zero of this is really, really missing the most asymmetric bet that I've ever seen in 40 plus years of trying to make asymmetric bets.
All right, guys, so that was it for the Bitcoin content for today. I wanted to focus a little bit on crypto as a broader, spectrum, the altcoins specifically. Everyone's always asking me altcoins that I'm looking for. Now, obviously, recently, the altcoins have taken a bit of a hit. This has a lot to do with just the sentiment, what's been happening with the Bitcoin price, etc. But the narratives and their potential have not been changed. One specifically that you guys know I'm extremely bullish on outside of, AI and these other narratives is real world assets. I just told you the story about JP Morgan and these other guys looking to tokenize assets. BlackRock has come out talking about tokenizing assets on Ethereum. But one of the biggest issues that we have is the trust of the data in and of itself, right? Just talking about, putting voting on the blockchain, right? Wouldn't that be a lot more transparent? Well, that's what this project, this company, Trueflation, is doing. They're doing decentralized infrastructure for real world asset metrics. Now, by the way, before I get into this, these guys are backed by Coinbase and Chainlink, just to kind of throw that out there before I even get started. And, if you come down here, some of the big issues, like they said, is there's very little trust in the official numbers. In fact, as we know, the US likes to kind of change the parameters, like, oh, we don't like the way this number looks, so let's just change the parameters behind these, right? When they said, oh, we're not in a recession because, we're not going to count like 2 negative GDPs because this and that, right? So these guys are helping to make it very transparent. Obviously, Brian Armstrong, being invested, as Coinbase says, they're a decentralized service that tracks inflation. Trueflation is a really awesome project. That's why we support them. Now, if we come over here and have a look, you can see some of the data that you can track. They have multiple categories ranging anywhere from housing, transport, clothing, communications, etc. And this is very important data. And what I think is going to end up happening is, as you have these real world assets that are going to actually be legitimately tracked, okay, as far as the indexes are concerned, I think that this is really what we're going to need to provide that transparent sort of information in the background. Now, obviously, it may not come across as, I guess, not necessarily like the sexiest thing, right? It's definitely not meme coin of the month, but it is something that you actually need if you want to move forward in this space. So I have been watching this project quite closely, and if we have a look right here, it is down significantly, but I am noticing that it appears as it's kind of bottoming out around this 45-cent range. Now, obviously not financial advice, but the way that I like to look at something is if I see value in a project, I'm going to start buying when I think it's consolidating. You don't want to buy on the euphorias up here when it was around, almost 90 cents, right? And if you have a look right here, I don't know if you can see it with my head, it kind of appears that this could be the first part of a potential double bottom. So Trueflation is definitely a project that I'm extremely interested in. And yeah, this is definitely one that I'm keeping on my radar. And for me personally, not financial advice, because I can't tell you what to do. I can only tell you what I'm doing. This right here for me is good accumulation range, enough for me to be able to hold this for long term, which I do believe this project has a lot more upside. In fact, with a market cap of about $55 million, there's no reason why this couldn't be a $1 billion market cap coin, especially in a bull run. So yeah, I mean, that's a good 20x in my opinion. So check it out, guys. Obviously do your own research, but I do ultimately think that the data and having these indexes is something that's going to complement the RWA space quite well. Now, the second one is actually something, and I always like to bring the opportunity for you guys to get into something essentially before, really before it's sort of hit the markets, and this is imaginary ones. Now, you may actually have heard of this because they've been around for quite a long time. In fact, they started out as an NFT project. So they actually started back in 2022. They had 8,888 animated 3D characters on the Ethereum network. If you actually come over here, you can see over on OpenSea, here's some of the little bubble guys from Imaginary Ones. So, essentially what sort of started out as this NFT project, it really turned into a massive ecosystem. For example, they've actually started with a gaming strategy. So they've had 6 million gameplays in 3 weeks, over 70 NFT communities. And I'll talk about the partnerships in just a bit, but just to show you some of the games that they've had this rider game as well as an endless runner, kind of like a maze, like a maze runner type game. What am I trying to think of? That game, what is it called? Where you run a Temple Run? Remember that game? There's been endless ones like Sonic and all that other stuff, but here's actually the here's one of the trailers that they have for it. So just to reiterate, this has been going on for 2 years now, no token involved or anything. They've just been building. They have both of those, the games available on, Google and Apple. And they've also had partnerships with Hugo, which is an international clothing brand. You could see here's a big display. I'm not quite sure where this image is from, but you could see the storefront and there they are front and center. Here's actually some promotional material that they had out talking about the Hugo X Imaginary Friends, collaboration as well. And honestly, when you look at some of their backers, they have a massive, massive amount of venture capitalists that have been involved in this. Obviously, in the crypto space, you'd be very familiar with someone like Animoca Brands, but they also have bigger names that I think more people would be familiar with, such as Samsung, for example. And obviously, a lot of investors, including, Ivan on Tech. He's an OG. I used to watch Ivan before I even started crypto. Actually, his videos kind of inspired me to start my own channel. So it's kind of cool seeing a big name like Ivan on this as well. So this is definitely a big project that, if you guys are interested in, I would definitely have a look. And I'm kind of bringing this to you, trying to get this out to you early because they're going to be listing on Bybit, and this is going to be happening May 14th. So these are just two things I'm bringing to you guys as I find things, as I'm looking at them. I'm just sharing them with you. So now let's move on to some of the quicker TA. I don't really want to harp on this too much because honestly, not much has changed. But as I've said, we're in a downtrend within a macro uptrend, right? So I would suspect that as we come closer to the bottom of this area, that would be signaling the bottom for me. We're having resistance because we have this heart line right here, basically coinciding with this right here. That's why we're being held down. You have a double resistance, right? But if we have a look right here, we have some very, very long-term support. So again, I still say that my lowest targets currently right now, our 57 target got hit. 55 to 48 would be the next, and that's if we even get that. We may potentially get those flush outs from the ETFs. Maybe some people are underwater, from their $62,200 sort of average buy-in, and maybe they're like, this is too much for me. But again, guys, I can't help but point out, what am I looking for here? My brush. Right here, okay? Yes, this is a red candle, massive buy to the top. What happened? Boom. All right, let's move up to the next one right here, which kind of almost touched the 21 exponential, right? Massive buy. What happened? 1 month of sideways. Boom. Okay. What are we doing? Oh, sorry. 1 week, not 1 month. This is a weekly chart. Excuse me. Kind of forgot what time frame we were on here. Same thing right here. Massive buy, right? Green candle. And what do you think would happen next? So our low on this 21 exponential is sitting at around $56,000, which I think is why we're holding at that area. It also represents a very key area of interest right here. You know, with the exception of this fake out right here, this acted as the majority of our resistance back here between March to pretty much May of 2021. And then it acted as our resistance as we came down from the double top. And if you zoom in again, you know, you could see right here, okay, you know, we were off by, what was this, a couple percent? Let's see, really seriously, what were we off by? Oh, we were off by 1.5%. My goodness, I should just pack it up and quit my job. I was off by 1.5%. But look at this, guys. Again, you know, where are we finding that base? So even if we have that consolidation here, I still believe, I don't believe it. I mean, the chart is showing us that we're in a constructive pattern, right? No matter how you draw these lines, we are putting in higher highs and higher lows on the macro, which is really the most important. Unless you're, you know, trying to trade the 4-hour chart, that's up to you. But again, pi cycle top indicator, not close to the top yet. You know, we're starting to converge. We're not quite there yet. In fact, this area looks like it might be leveling out a bit. And this area has acted as the base, or at least the area where we tend to dance around, right? And once we break above the top of the pi cycle, that is when you're really going to see the fireworks. And currently, that is still moving to the upside, and that's around $82,000, right? And this is all coinciding during a time in which you're having the DXY being held down by this downward sloping resistance. So that's where I'm going to end today's video. I don't have much to talk about as far as the TA. I think you guys know, yeah, it's a boring consolidation period. Could we go lower? Yes. There's even a potential that we can have a wick down to 48,000. I wouldn't bet on it. I wouldn't be waiting for it. Is it possible? Yes. But ultimately, I believe it's going to get bought up just as quick as all the other times have been bought up. And once we get done with this, which, you know, and let me go all the way back to Mags. What he was saying back here was, you know, this move we're having right here is only about really half of the move that we had here. So if you were around during this time period, it should really be no different, right? We could bounce back up, come down, retest it again, right? Have that full consolidation before the next move to the breakout. So ultimately, guys, that is where I'm gonna leave this video. I think today's video has been long enough. Thank you so much for coming back to the channel. You guys rock. You're the reason that I make these videos. If you guys do wanna learn how to trade, make sure you check out these tutorials. There is $70,000 in bonuses below. And don't forget, MetaSignals has now opened the 7-day refund trial. If you're not happy, you get your full money back, and use the code ZOMBIE, ZOMBI, if you want that 20% off, guys. Until next time, stay crypto. I love you, and peace out.